2 years have passed since the world as we were aware of its irreversible transformation. What was intended to be a casual excursion. One day swiftly at the beach with my kid Leo unfurled into something surprising. My husband Ethan was unable to accompany us. This time. No, he didn't. Work was held a major importance in my life, and I had become accustomed to being alone. Friend. However, that day had a distinct feeling of distinction, not only in the past, but also now as okay. As we were illuminated by the sun's brilliant glow, we carefully unfolded the towels. Maybe that day's warmth was a too much touch. I leaned back and enjoyed a brief period of peace and quiet apart from the chaos of existence, and asked Leo to help me to put sunscreen on my back. I hadn't really thought about it. I am my child's parent. What would force for me to do that? At first, it seemed as even if he was only helping, appeared after that instant. His fingers continually brushed across me, falling farther with every touch. I permitted him to proceed without hindrance. What prevented me from taking such action? You believe you know who you are? You are kin. However, there are some when one instant can break everything. For me, it took place at the seashore on that particular day. Since then, I've noticed a significant shift in myself. I shared my life with others for almost 15 years. With his wife, Ethan. Those who are familiar what our life would have said about us as the perfect couple, living in a lovely home, bringing up happy kids, and living a steady, contented existence. Just do the problems as soon as you enter, they come out. To encounter the feeling of hollowness eludes comprehension until one is fully engaged in it. Ethan's thoughts was preoccupied for years by his job, spending weekends, staying late evenings, as well as holidays, to his art. I would say that he did it for us. Frequently remind myself, his unrelenting work and steadfast dedication were designed to enhance the future of our family. But that line of thinking started to become less clear over time. What is the worth of a house that is still not in use? It was impossible for him to see my presence any longer. When he arrived, he hardly even looked at my guidance. He stopped asking about my health, aspirations, and needs. We had brief but heartfelt discussions on things like food, bills, or the kids. He was also worried about Leo and Lily, his younger sister. He looked like a ghost, even in their presence. It's there, yet it feels elusive. I would take a seat across from him at the table, questioning if he still acknowledged me. That morning is ingrained in my mind. Ethan exploded. The door as I was occupied with the kitchen. He got his bag, touched Lily's head with a tender kiss, and gave me a quick look. I'm sorry, Freya. Unfortunately, I won't be capable of coming today. He said that there was an unforeseen problem at work. I decided not to argue with it. I just nodded and pushed the knot in my throat down. Throat, just like I always have. I told myself that everything was all right. Correct. I could go out with Leo. Only the two of us. 16 years old Leo was tall and lean. His dad's from a face that had brown eyes, was more delicate and gentle in its characteristics. When it was revealed that it would just the two of us, he said, not very much in reaction. Using a with a simple shrug, he took the luggage and followed me to the vehicle. He took the passenger seat, enmeshed in listening to music, looking out the window, as many teenagers frequently do. A grin appeared on my face while I watched him. He changed so quickly that I usually worried that a single blink could make me lose him too. While I was navigating the meandering path to the shore, reflections of I kept thinking about Ethan because they so often did. Recollections of our common memories came flooding back. Evenings spent taking leisurely walks and going to the movies with impromptu excursions, all planned in the spirit of having fun. I thought about it. He would stroke me as he went. the manner his eyes glistened just looking at me. It had been years since I had that sensation. I didn't have much experience in the emotional path. I was completely worn out from the strain of invisibility. When we got there, Leo helped me move our possessions to a calm area by the water's edge. He unfolded the umbrella as I laid up the towels underneath it. For some reason I couldn't explain, I felt it was necessary to talk to him. Maybe he was the only one present at the time. Maybe what I really needed was just an open ear. Is it nice to you to be outside? I made an effort to inject. I spoke with a feeling of delight as I spoke it. Sweeping his hair out of his face, a nod of recognition was given. He said, "Yeah, Mom, it's pretty nice." As I lay back on the towel, the warmth of the sun touched my skin. For a minute, I gave myself permission to do nothing, trying to get rid of the burden of the tension that had built up over the previous several years, if only temporarily brief moment. At that time, the eye had a thought about sunscreen. I woke up from my sleep and looked on Leo. "Would you please consider, can you help me lay this on my back?" I asked. "I can't seem to get in touch with it." He hesitated for a second, pondering before arriving at I offered him the bottle. I leaned back, my back again crushed against the towel, and tried to take my time. The first touch was light and purposeful, like he was conscious of hurting me in any way. Suffering. I smiled because of that, bringing to remembrance how his little fingers would hold my hand as we made our way through the together in the street during those carefree days of his childhood. I said to him, "You may wish to exert a little more pressure." However, I continued to speak softly. "Everything is all right." While he was putting the oil on my back and shoulders, I recently discovered he exuded confidence with every motion. The warmth and cadence of I was forced to close my eyes by hands. I permitted me to enjoy it for a moment. I hadn't felt that way in ages. The warmth of someone else's hand. That thought weighed heavily on me, much more than I should have spoken. Then his hands started to move lower, slowly and methodically following the bend of my back. I pulled out a sharp, take a breath. I opened my mouth to try to say what I think, but there was stillness. Me. In spite of the flurry of ideas whirling inside of me, I decided to stay quiet. I told myself that everything was well. I was persuaded that he was just offering assistance, and that my concerns were unwarranted. I knew that, however, after he established his hands lingered for a moment, towel aside, moment, hovering close to the brink. I felt the burden of his doubt, mixing with mine. However, I decided not to step in. Rather, I said things that I later regretted. "Everything is all right. You can touch that too." The statement was powerful and hung in the air. Feeling threatened and the time as it left my mouth, I understood that no one else was brave enough to say it. He stayed quiet, but Leo continued without hesitation. I tightly closed my eyes, sensing his hands as they explore should not have gone out. I pondered if he were able to detect the quick pounding of my heart. I wanted to get up and tell him to stop. No, I didn't, but I couldn't manage to achieve that. I didn't do anything about it. I remained confused about the causes of it. Maybe it was the feeling of deep isolation. Maybe it was the desiring recognition in spite of its intrinsic defects. Or perhaps I was no longer concerned. That terrible day at the shore, a piece of me broke, and nothing has been quite the same since. Correct. Thank you for your companionship on this. Travel. I am aware that this could be challenging to comprehend, and I genuinely appreciate your readiness to pay attention. If you discover this tale is fascinating, or do you think so, might strike a chord with someone you know, please think about liking and subscribing. It enables me to tell more stories like this and makes me feel as though friendship on my travels. The time has come to continue on. Everything appeared to change after that day. The way wherein Leo looked at me throughout the night that came next. The incidents that occurred and the feelings they evoked were unchangeable within me, outside of my grasp to change. It was neither short-lived nor unimportant, carried on without interruption. When I looked into his eyes, a fugitive excellence captured my interest and left me incapable of determining the origin of his strange wording. But I discovered myself I couldn't look anywhere else. After. When we got back that evening, everything was hidden as though nothing had happened. I carried out my obligations, made dinner, and asked about Leo's day at school, and folded garments into the late at night. Considering the afternoon's events, my hands shuddered uncontrollably. His palms, his way of hanging about, and the tightness I experienced, everything working together to maintain I thought about him. I felt bad about my behaviors and was angry with the way he treated me. Feel for my own son. Ethan stayed unaware of anything that was missed. He was always late getting home. His tie was slack, and his face seemed tired. By out of instinct, he kissed me. Cheek, a subtle indication of the love that stayed there once. Has there been a long day? I started the dialogue, aiming to initiate a conversation. With a simple nod and grunt, he walked over to the living room, the standard procedure. His presence made me a secondary consideration, leaving me with the eerie feeling of becoming invisible again. As the A's darkness fell, Ethan's steady snores permeated the air next to me. As I stayed alert, my eyes focused on over the ceiling. Even so, the house surrounded me in quiet, echoing in my head with a screech of ideas. My Leo's mind was racing all day and day off, his eyes, his hands, everything that had happened. I needed to bring it to an end before it continued to spiral, because I knew in my heart that it was not correct. However, a darker, more remote a part of me clung to it, longing for the touch, the acknowledgement, and the sense of recognition. As the days passed, Leo said nothing on the subject, but his quiet reverberated, deeper than any words that are spoken could communicate. He didn't leave me alone. Instead, he seemed to hover close. He would watch me while I cooked, cleaned up, or just sat by themselves in the night silence. I gave in, happened. I let him go on, as I gave myself permission to perform the same. The weekend after that was really hot, and the home appeared to emit heat as though it were being consumed burning. He slid away again, called by yet another's demands, sudden change. Again, it was Leo and I alone. I asked whether he was at ease going back to the beach by itself. I start to wonder about the why I brought it up. I used to think thought being outside could help me hone my ideas. I could have had the impulse to challenging myself in order to learn how I could put everything in my immediate vicinity at a distance. Me. There was a calm atmosphere during the drive. Quiet. Leo decided not to hear this time. He just looked out the window. His knee was twitching uneasily underneath him. I tried to put a notion into words, to convey anything at all, but the words refused to come out of my mouth, despite my sincere attempts. The shore. When we arrived, it was almost abandoned. A bright blue glistened in the ocean, color, as the soft wind brushed my face in a revitalizing manner. Again, Leo provided a hand as we unfolded the towels. Hand in our planning. This time, I was unable to ask him to apply because sunblock. I closed my eyes and leaned back, acting like everything was fine. However, the look persisted, tangible and unnerving. There was no question that he saw me. Later in the afternoon, the tension became unbearable. We decided to take a beach shower to refresh before we leave. In an attempt to remove the sand from my body, I meant for the work to be completed quickly. However, and an unexplainable event occurred that still confounds me. Leo was the first person to enter beneath the tumbling, letting the water run down his back. I hovered in the darkness, watching him for a few seconds before choose to step in. I discovered who I was. I stripped off my clothing and stood next to him, under the cool water's embrace, letting its soft current spill over my skin. Leo looked at me with surprise. His face was a riddle that is hard to solve. It could be surprise, doubt, or maybe even something quite different. He kept quiet. After looking into his eyes for a second, I proposed that you might also want to take off your shorts. Rinsing thoroughly is crucial. I'm wondering why. Behind what I say, maybe I was trying to demonstrate my dominance in order that I could stop it all. Or perhaps I assessing my own, or testing him. Capacities. He paused for a moment, but finally gave in to the pressure and took off his shorts. We were by ourselves as the rain fell, poured all around us. With a purposeful speed, I asked, "Help me with my back." I turned away from him. Yes, he did. As previously, he was cautious, with his hand. The conflict between us. It was obvious. I stopped when his hands touched my waist. The air was heavy and the unrelenting. The water's rush overpowered everything else. Noises. Maybe I could have figured something out. To leave. I had the strength to take it to the end. Instead, I leaned back, seized his hands, pressed them against him, and drew them to my chest. He didn't do anything, as I participated in the conflict. The incidents that came after are challenging for me to fully express yourself. I will not from carrying out this action. It developed as a flurry of longing, loneliness, and a mysterious quality that is difficult to describe. It was not soft. It most definitely wasn't slow as well. The futile, intense, being misled in every way possible way. I wanted to stop, but I discovered not able to do it myself. I didn't want as well. After it was over, we stayed below the unrelenting waterfall. The any remnants that are visible are washed away by water. However, ignoring the reality, he hugged and held me in a manner that, having spent years apart from my life, I let him continue. After that, for a minute we were silent, leaving unsaid words between us. Following a silence, we dried as we walked back to the car. Ourselves, collected our possessions, and left. A quick look over at Leo showed off his scarlet lips and the stiffness of his motions. I became aware that I had damaged everything. I was positive that we had crossed a line that could never to be crossed again. However, for I felt for the first time in years a life force in me. The trip silently got back in the car. The air within the vehicle seemed heavy and stifling, as though the air itself planned to keep us rooted. Despite my eyes, I had my hands fixed on the road, clutched the steering wheel. My mind kept racing out of control. I could still feel him, how big of, considering what had just happened, his hands and presence that permeates the atmosphere. My eyes felt a strong attraction to him in the passenger seat. He didn't move, looking out the window. His face reddened, lips pursed, and complexion exposed the intensity of his agitation. Abruptly, the stillness was abruptly broken by him. He said, "Mother," in a quiet voice, not much more than a whisper. I discovered who I was. Do not look into his eyes. I didn't do. Despite his acting, his voice was really clear within my ears. "What is this? What happened over there?" My heart pounded with vigor. For a brief instant, I thought about pretending not to know, changing the subject or just ignoring it. However, the reality hung on. Denial was not comforting, particularly considering our mutual experience. After attracting a reluctant breath, I told them, "I'm not sure. Understand." In fact, it was true, or as close to as best I could. Being aware of what had occurred and the causes behind it turned out to be a difficult undertaking, for I only understood that everything had changed. The there was quiet as we rolled into the driveway. The engine ceased to run as I stopped. However, none of us woke up from our location. Then Leo examined me closely. A specific apprehension took hold of me as I looked into his eyes. It wasn't guilt or shame, nor was it ambiguity. It was a wish. How long? Have you been having these sentiments? His inquiry made me shiver. My back. The exact query persisted, and I stared into his eyes, thinking. A deep realization awoke inside of me. I am unsure. I muttered mildly. I think I may have spoken for longer than I had planned. We stayed in the darkness, the unsaid words dangling ponderously in the surrounding quiet. I am sure that this was the end of everything. We were going to enter, let it go and act as though it never happened. But Leo's thoughts strayed in a different way. He's given me a kiss, me earlier. The door in front of me might be opened. At first, it faltered, unsurely. He walked carefully, as if he was afraid I may back off. I didn't, though I gave him permission to kiss me, and in exchange, he returned my kiss. Right then, I totally lost my temper. It was the isolation that had engulfed me. Years of disregard, or possibly the manner in which Leo looked at me, a strange looking and treasured after all these time. I decided to not oppose whatever it was that reached me. He pulled me to the right, his fingers moving over the exterior of our house as though they were supposed to be there. Initially, in what seemed like an eternity, I felt an uptick in vitality, noted as essential. Nothing more had meaning. Time seems to be hazy. When we became entangled in one another, the presence of others. In the end, there we went inside. The trip to the entrance is a haze. However, the feel of his hand remains in mine, together with the charged silence fell between us. While they were crossing the scenario, the threshold decayed. It seemed as if we had been holding ourselves back for an eternity, and finally we had the freedom to let it all out. The dam had collapsed, and then the days became cloudy. Leo has a habit of approaching, looking for moments to touch me or come into contact with my look as the world dissolved into the context. I kept telling myself to get out of this cycle. However, each. When I looked at him, I was met with the same emptiness that reverberated inside me. We were each other's reflections, mirroring one another's desire, and I found it impossible to say no. I was without wish to. As I lay in bed next to my eyes strayed to the ceiling, Ethan, his steady breathing rhythm filling the silence surrounding us. My Leo's thoughts were captivated. His hand gave me a renewed sense of life. Again, despite my internalized guilt, it failed to restrain me like a serpent. My determination. I had a keen awareness of its incorrectness, of the unavoidable disintegration that was waiting. But I discovered that I was captured by its captivating charm. Our relationship worsened, farther till it finally reached a stop. One night I ended up at to divert attention, wash dishes at the kitchen sink, myself from the whirlpool of ideas within my mind. As Ethan worked diligently, and Lily had a restful sleep, Leo stayed in my shadow. He looked at me with the as strong as it was at the beach. When I turned around, I talked to Leo, softly reminding him to be careful, resisted the need to run away. He came close enough for me to feel the sensation of his breath on my flesh. She said, "Mom, you take up my ideas all the time." A wave of coldness came over me, across me. I felt my heart pounding so intensity that I was afraid would blow up. From my chest, I told him to hold on, withdraw to his chamber and give me some isolation. I should have retained those words to myself, but I didn't follow through. Out. and I can't stop myself. That was the point at when everything broke down. Leo pressed his lips once more to it feels more like mine right now. Difficult, a requirement that weighs hard. I kissed him back, but it didn't, I lost, because it bothered me that it was wrong. View of Lily, Ethan, and the world we had created together. That was all that was important. Was my boy Leo the only person in years who gave me a sense of worth? Since nothing has changed since that beach day. I don't think it went back to its previous state. Will never occur. Leo and I have parted ways, an irreversible line. The weight of because humiliation endures, a persistent pain that cuts deep, yet I'm not put off by it. That is what gives me the most joy. Dread. I look at Ethan and Lily every day, wondering how they manage to ignore it all. They continue to be unaware of the rifts in our family. They might just be consumed by their own lives. Maybe I've just grown more adept at hiding it in the here and now at this time. I know that this is temporary, but secrets have a way of exposing themselves. At the time approaches, the inevitable collapse of objects will occur. I have attempted to dismantle it. Ending. I persuaded myself that it was erroneous. Leo and I both deserve something more. However, I discover that I am a slide whenever his fingers come into contact with either his eyes meet mine or against my flesh, as like I'm the only thing on his mind universe. After a long period of time, I feel genuinely alive thanks to him. Perhaps forever. I have to face that actuality. This is broken, and I believe I couldn't figure out how to fix it. I'm beginning to doubt my capacity to complete this assignment. This is exactly why I'm telling this story. I hope someone to have the expertise, the absolute reality, a concept that has escaped my consideration. I desperately seek help to get out of this situation prior to the expiration of the time limit. Getting in touch with you if you have any help to provide, or if you are aware of someone who has gone through something similar circumstance. Take this as a warning note. You can enter realms by being alone. You never thought it would exist. Don't let it to take over your life as it used to did mine. Don't put off being conscious until mayhem breaks out in order to realize the truth of the circumstance. After crossing that line, it is impossible to go back. Thank you for being willing to listen. Kindly share your opinions and observations. If you found this video to be meaningful, please give it a like and subscribe for more content. I miss feeling like I'm not alone. At times, the most profound, we are the ones that betray others, ourselves. Each of us participates in these actions directed against ourselves.